Hailing from the great cold state of Alaska, I am the Frozen Gamer. Welcome to Dads in Gaming, where I interview fellow dads who are not only gamers, but content creators. That content may or may not be gaming related, but every one of these gentlemen are passionate both about video games and being dads. Joining me today for the third Dads in Gaming is yet another very special guest. He's a man with encyclopedic knowledge of every major and minor holiday of every calendar day each year, and like a Baptist preacher, is absolutely addicted to alliteration. He is one of the founding members and host of Good Morning Guys podcast, Mr. Lucas Ham Swisher. How are you doing today, Lucas?
Great, Nathan, and I really enjoyed your thoughtful introduction. You really covered some bases there in that intro. Well done.
Well, I did as much as I could given my limited knowledge of your podcast and more my knowledge of your questions sent into Married to the Games.
Oh, yeah. I love me some holidays. That is for sure. Yeah.
So what is the national holiday today? Or international holiday?
Oh, man, you totally caught me off guard. But I think if we were to give it a holiday, it would be the holiday celebrating 1 week of quarantine for my family. I don't know if there's a name for that, but like Quarantini Wednesday, maybe? I don't know.
So is it actually a celebration for you, or is it more along the lines of you're managing?
Yeah, it's definitely managing. We're definitely just trying to keep, the boat from leaking. We're trying to make sure to not lose any members of the crew. It's now going better than expected, but it was pretty rough in certain parts of the this past week for sure.
Yeah. Are your kids in public school or are they homeschooled?
So neither. They're actually kind of in the middle, maybe. I don't know if it's in the middle, but they go to a private school. It's a Christian school.
Oh, okay.
But last Tuesday, I was actually substitute teaching at the school, and they came in and told our class and everybody else that school was canceled until further notice. And so starting last Wednesday, we've all been at the house, I think, minus running some errands on Friday morning, and then my wife went grocery shopping on Saturday. Other than that, we've all been at the house for the past week, and we started distance learning this past Monday. So that has been a totally different experience, and so that's where we are.
How's your toilet paper situation looking?
Oh man, it's running on all cylinders. We have I guess it would be a Brazilian version of Sam's Club right down the street, and they have more toilet paper than we even have any business of purchasing. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's better to have more than you need than not have enough.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. No shortage of toilet paper here, but we definitely have been watching from afar some of the drama surrounding toilet paper in the U.S., and it's been pretty comical, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the main part of the interview, what is it that you're currently playing?
Well, it's something that I've been very unashamedly sharing about with pretty much our many podcasting communities that I'm a part of and that we're mutually a part of, like Married to the Games and the podcast I'm a part of with Good Morning Guys. I am all about Dead Cells. Like, I'm living, eating, and breathing a little, I guess, roguelike Metroidvania side-scroller called Dead Cells, and I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I've looked at that, and it looks like it would be great, but I have a feeling that I would just get too frustrated at dying constantly, and of course, roguelike on top of that is just like a word that automatically turns me off to even trying the game.
So why is that? I'm curious to know why that's a buzzword, a negative word for you, the roguelike. What is, have you had negative experiences with
it's not
roguelikes?
Specifically that. It's just more that I have a limited amount of time to play games.
Yeah.
And so I want to feel like I'm able to get more out of a game, and if I keep getting set back to zero, that could be really frustrating. Now I know that, at least from what I've heard, Dead Cells only sort of does that because you can like pick up your gear if you get back to where you died. Is that correct?
Right. Uh, no, it's more like you can upgrade your blacksmith so that when you are proceeding through the stages and the areas again, it gets more and more likely every time that your weapons will be stronger. And there's such a variety of weapons that there's a playstyle for everybody. Like you can be like a trap dropping assassin. You can be a dagger wielding, or even like a dagger wielding assassin. You can be just a crazy shield and sword guy. You can be like a Legolas like character and just shoot everyone from afar, snipe them with your long distance arrows, or there's all kinds of things. Like you even have little creatures that can follow you around, and you can feel like the Beastmaster. It's quite varied in its fighting system, but there is a sense of starting back at zero. If you're not a big fan of dying, or like training yourself over and over through death, then there's a chance you might not like it, but you don't really know till you try. So
Yeah.
there is that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of those types of games, that one's probably the most appealing to me because of the art style. But it's just, I don't know, I have a hard time convincing myself that it's worth jumping into that when I already have so many other games I could play where I don't have to worry about starting back at zero.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand that as a fellow dad, and as someone that works at home, and now especially I'm with my family 24/7. The time you have to be creative. Like I get up at 5 a.m. to play video games because it's really the best time. It's I get like an hour or two before my kids wake up, and then once they get up, we get going. We do devotions together, we have breakfast together, and then we get ready for the school day. So I totally understand the limited time. Now I will say that with this game, it does respect your time. Like even though you can die, a lot. At the same time, it's very conducive to just sitting down and playing for like 10 minutes and then dropping it and going doing something else and then coming back later. It's a difficult game, but at the same time, you can play it in little spurts, and it works well, I think, with an unpredictable schedule. So I would say in that regards, it would be a game worth trying just to see. You just don't know. Like some people will pick up a game and it just comes to them naturally. I don't know your side-scrolling expertise or how many different side-scrolling games you've played, but for me, it was a game that I played the first difficulty setting, and I think I beat the boss in the second or third try, and I was like, oh, this game's easy. And then I picked up what they call a boss cell that you get when you beat the quote-unquote final boss, the Hand of the King. And once you do that, you start back over, but you can raise it up a level, and the enemies get harder, but you can upgrade yourself higher as well, and you can get a larger variety of weapons. And so it's just that system. There's like 6 different difficulties, and I just this past week got to the final difficulty, and I played it for like 5 minutes and immediately understood that I was in a new level of difficulty. It's actually called 5BC or Hell difficulty, and I definitely had reached another level of hell. So it's going to be fun, to say the least.
Well, more power to you. I'm just not really sure. Like it's one of those things where I might be willing to commit somewhere down the line, but right now I feel like I have more than enough stuff to play as it is.
Yeah, I got you, man. I understand.
So
feel you. What are you playing
all
right now? I am curious to know, since you're not playing Dead Cells. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you questions, but I was like, you know what, I might as well.
I am playing the opposite of Dead Cells, which is Animal Crossing.
Oh man, yeah, that is like that is definitely the opposite of Dead Cells.
Yeah, it's pretty much Animal Crossing, and I've been playing. I did some stuff to like record some gameplay yesterday. So I decided to start up New Game Plus on God of War.
There you go.
but it's my first time playing in over a year, so I was pretty rusty.
Yeah. Well, at least you started back at the beginning. What's really bad,
Yeah.
and that game's waiting for me to platinum. I beat the game, but I still need to do all the side stories
Oh
and
no.
go around and beat the Valkyries and all that. And I'm kind of dreading it, but at
Gosh.
the same time, that game is so good. Like the
Oh,
battle
it is.
system and the overall feel. The story is amazing. I love that game. That's definitely in my top 5 games of all time. So
Yeah.
that's a great game to go back and play. New Game Plus for God of War is like a no-brainer. So more power to you.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm like really going to play it right now because
Right.
I have a feeling that it might end up coming to PC. And if it does,
Ah,
I could,
yes. Master Race.
get the better frame rates and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, that game is one where it would just be so awesome at
Oh,
high
I can't
frame
imagine
rates.
how beautiful it is on a full-fledged out, like high-end PC that I know I'll never touch with a 50-foot pole. But I respect it.
Yeah.
That would be amazing, I bet.
But yeah, I played a little bit of that. I mean, I basically just played past the first big fight and then
Oh, yeah.
stopped after that. And been playing a pretty good amount of Final Fantasy VIII Remastered on
Okay.
Switch.
Nice. Final
Which-
Fantasy VIII is that's the gun blades, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like you got yourself like that Squall, I think is his name. He's got the fluffy jacket and the cool
Yep.
haircut and the gun blade. I thought the gun blades were some of the coolest weapons in Final Fantasy lore,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, that was always one of my favorite things. But it was my first Final Fantasy game ever, and so
Oh, really? Wow.
playing the original version.
Yeah. On
mean,
the PS1.
So yeah, because I mean I'm not that young. I'm 33, but
Yeah.
I didn't have any consoles or anything until
Right.
around the time I turned 12 when I finally convinced my dad to let me get one.
Yeah.
And so the first Final Fantasy game I played was 8 on PC.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing I could convince my dad to get for. Plus, I didn't have a PS1 at the time.
Right.
But then I've gotten the game on PS1 and on PSP, and then I got the Steam version a couple years ago.
Nice.
And then, of course, I just bought the remaster
Yeah.
with the cartridge version. So I played a little bit of that. Played a little bit of 7 as well, just because I
man.
wanted to record the opening mission. And I think
Yeah.
actually between that and 8, 7 has aged graphically a little bit better.
Uh-huh.
Or at least I feel like they did more to make it feel like an actual remaster than they did with 8. Even though 8 they updated the character models, it's like that's all they updated.
Oh, really?
And
That's too bad.
I mean, it's not entirely a bad thing because I love the game anyway.
Right,
And
but-
I'm kind of glad that it's not like drastically changed. But like there's moments where you'll have NPCs that are updated character models, and then you'll just have random static ones in the background that are still the PS1 models.
Yeah. I mean, when you put that on
And
a
it
flat
looks really
screen,
bad.
it looks real bad.
Yeah.
You got to at least update it enough so it looks good on the high end, not the high end TVs, but at least a flat screen. Like, it's
Yeah.
got to match that a little better. And it's funny that you bring up Final Fantasy because one, that's the other game that I've been playing right now, along with Dead Cells. I'm also playing Final Fantasy 15, and it's my second
right.
go round. I made it further this time than I did last time, and I'm enjoying it. I'm not like a huge JRPG fan, but I'm a pretty big Final Fantasy fan. My first Final Fantasy was actually Final Fantasy 7, one before 8. So I'm just about 5 years older than you. 5 years. I just turned 38. I have to do the math still. But I'm about 5 years older than you, but Final Fantasy 7 was my first Final Fantasy. But then I went back and played Final Fantasy, I can't remember if it's 6 or 3. It's one number in Japan and then the other number here.
That's probably 6.
6. Yes.
I think you and I were talking about that on the Discord. Is that the one where like you started and you got to the halfway point? You stopped?
Yeah, I got to one spot where I felt like I was playing hide and go seek with the characters, and I just got impatient. And I think life happened. I was in high school at the time. I believe I was in high school, and because I'd gone back, I had a Super Nintendo, but I'd never played I hadn't played a lot of RPGs at that time, but once I played Final Fantasy VII, I was like, what are these RPGs? And then I played like Breath of Fire. I almost said Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what I played in high school. That was a while ago. But I did play Link to the Past and all those, classic Super Nintendo RPGs. But I've always had there's always been a special place in my heart for Final Fantasy games. I just love the lore and how each one is different, but they always have these little Easter eggs and these characters and different things that kind of connect them all. It's really cool. So, but yeah, that's great, man. Going back to visit Final Fantasy VIII for you. I actually didn't finish that one either. That's one of the 2 Final Fantasy games I think I didn't finish was 8. So, but it's still a good one.
The thing about... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying it was a good one. It was just, again, I think I was in high school and I don't know, like life happened. I had finals or had summer break and was doing more outside stuff. And just, I got back to the game and I was like, what is going on? And, with RPGs, you can't just, take a break for a month and then go back and expect to just pick it right back up where you left off. And so, I lost my way with that one. I'll probably go back and play it again someday.
Yeah, 8 is one of those where I have kind of like interesting experiences with save corruption and that sort of thing back in the PS1 and PC days. So when I originally was playing it on PC, I didn't get super far. I mean, I was like, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 hours in. And my save data got corrupted to where it showed that I had almost 100 hours. I had a bunch of items I was not supposed to have, and it would crash every time I'd start a fight in a certain area.
Weird.
Like, if you remember Laguna as one of the characters, like so the first time you start up as Laguna, it would go into that first fight, and then after that it would crash every time. And it was just completely busted, so I ended up having to start over again. And then I later ended up playing on PS1, but it was my cousin's memory card, and he had rolled his truck, and so the memory card was damaged slightly, and so data would just get corrupted all the time on it. So I got to the end of disc 3, and then my data got corrupted.
Oh no!
And I lost everything.
That's a bummer.
And that happened twice.
No way.
And I had no save data other than that. And I mean, after that, I started just doing like 6 or 7 saves at a time just to make sure I didn't have to worry about that.
Jeez.
And was able to finish it up. But it was pretty annoying.
Yeah,
to say
definitely.
The least.
I mean, fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, and it's like, dang, I can't.
Right?
Maybe I'm cursed, or I'm trying to think of games where that's I know that's happened before, where I've run into an issue, but usually after the first time, I'm like, after being that far, starting over, I probably would have taken a long break. But then it happens the second time. I don't know, man. I give you props, man, for finishing it that third time around. That's
well, I mean, it wasn't all like back to back, but at the same time, it was also a point in time in my life, when I didn't have much of any games, and so it was pretty much, if I wanted to play this game, that's what I would do.
Right.
And
the good old days where there wasn't like game.
The time.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now it's like I don't even try to keep up anymore. Like there was like a part of me at some point in the past few years, I was like, man, it'd be great to just play like, the new games and keep up with the conversation. And it's like next to impossible. It's crazy how fast it is.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten to that point. I mean, what's been kind of nice though is sometimes being able to play a game after it's been out for a while and just to get to like really devote time to it.
Right.
I mean, I ended up doing that with God of War and Spider-Man and Horizon Zero Dawn and Detroit Become Human. Like all of those I played like a year after they came out, and I just sat down and that was like all I played for each of those games. Mm-hmm. And it was really, really nice. Oh, Spider-Man 2 was another one. But and I'm kind of liking having that option a little bit more, not feeling like I have to play it right away.
Right.
Just being like, okay, I'm ready to sit down and devote some real time to this game And so then when I do that, then I'm able to fully enjoy it.
Yeah.
Plus, then usually I get all the DLC and everything, and it's cheaper. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, when it includes all the patches and the updates and DLC, I mean that's great. I know for me, it's the matter of like the social aspect of like talking with people of what's going on and kind of living the practice of the past. When we were in like middle school and high school, and you would like get with your buddies and say, "Oh man, did you see this boss? Or did you see this? Did you do this thing or that thing?" Like gathering around the water cooler and stuff. I like to do that, so I try to at least every year play at least a couple games that are semi-new or to have that conversation. But yeah, for the most part, I'm like you. I play it a year, 2, 3 years later, get it on sale. I'm much more of that practice, not just because of preference, but because of the bank account. I'm a missionary in Brazil. I am not rolling in the dough, nor do I want to. So I have to work within my budget and work within life and everything else going on. So, yeah.
Well, I suppose we should probably actually get into the main interview questions.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We'll definitely come back
about games
to
we're playing.
Yeah, we'll come back to a lot of the other stuff, but let's start off by just asking. Good morning, guys.
Yeah.
Why don't you give your sales pitch for this podcast?
The elevator sales pitch. So, pretty much the Good Morning Guys is just 4 guys hanging out to talk about the game of life and the games we love to watch and play. Like, it's pretty much a good mix of talking about like our week to weeks, the challenges, the joys. Like last week we talked about we talked about the coronavirus, and we talked about quarantines, and we talked about different things. Just recently we we talked about lying and just our first lies, and but at the same time we love to talk about video games. So we talk about the games we've been playing. We talk about movies. It's pretty much a mix of talking about life and then just kind of encouraging conversation and making sure that nobody's going at the game of life alone. And so we want to just provide a podcast, a community, that will connect people and help us go at it together. So hopefully that got us to up a few floors of the elevator in the pitch. So that's
I'd say so.
Yeah.
So, you kind of touched on it, but what was it specifically that led you to create the podcast?
I think it was definitely, and I know there are a number of podcasts that would say this, that it was definitely in part to the Married to the Games podcast and community. Just being a part of that, seeing the connection that people had through the podcast, but also wanting sometimes something a little more. Like there were a few of us that just got to talking about making a podcast and wanting to do something that wasn't just video game, or not. I know that Married to the Games doesn't do just video games, but it was something, at least for me, where I wanted to maybe get a little further out on the edge of the fringes in terms of like what we talked about. Like we have an episode where we just talked about death, and we talked about our personal experiences in it and what the Bible says about it, just things like that. So I think it was a desire to just build yet another way for people to connect. We understand that through podcasting, it's a medium that isn't always like mainstream, but at the same time it gives like an opportunity to connect with people you wouldn't otherwise connect with in a more personal way, as opposed to like multiplayer or maybe Facebook or people that you already know. Like really getting to know new people. I think podcasting is a really cool way to do that. So that's pretty much where it started with me, Patrick, and Mark, and then we met Ronnie, who's Patrick's friend and kind of a coworker. They don't work in the same department of their job and with the business they work with in Cincinnati, but they work in the same building. So that's how the 4 of us got together, and that's kind of what drove us to get into podcasting.
And how long has it been going now?
We just did our 81st episode, and I think that means it's been a year and a half. We actually started September 11th, of 2018. So, yeah, it's been about a year and a half.
And have you guys been able to maintain a weekly show, or has it been a little more sporadic than that?
No, we've somehow, amidst everything from people's schedules not always working out every week, or even occasionally losing audio for a podcast, for an episode, we've been able to record and publish an episode every week since the beginning. So we haven't missed a week. Now we all, none of us I think have had perfect records. So there's always been someone missing. Sometimes we've had some guests. It's varied, but we've always had an episode come out every week for the past year and a half.
Now, have you ever had anyone fall asleep on the podcast?
No, we have no narcoleptic tiger claws in our podcast, not yet. But we've all managed to stay awake somehow. I will tell you that there have been times where I have been dog tired, and there have been words coming out of my mouth, and I was not sure if they made sense or if they were even going to make the cut. I'm pretty sure there's a few times I would say something and be like, Pat, you can edit that out, right? And of course he'd say no, but I at least had to try. Because here in Brazil, when we record in certain parts of the year, because of the time change and the time difference in being north and southern hemispheres and all that jazz, sometimes it's a 3-hour difference. And so they would start, around 7 or 8 their time, but it would be like 11 o'clock my time. And we would finish sometimes at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I am not a night person. I past 10, 11 o'clock, usually past 10, you can ask my wife about this, I'll be dozing off while watching a TV show, or, the only thing that keeps me awake is riveting conversation or video games. That's the only thing that I don't fall asleep to. So, but no one's fallen asleep yet.
Well, that's good. When did you get your start in gaming? On what platform and with what game?
That would be, start with when. I think it was 1980. I'm going to say 87.
That's the year I was born.
I think it was 87. Yeah, there you go. I was celebrating your birthday, man. I was playing the old Nintendo. I think it was 87. It's possible it was 88, but I think it was like right around kindergarten, either right before or right after I started kindergarten. So somewhere around 87, 88. It was with the original Nintendo, and my first game was that beautiful 3-in-1 cartridge of Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and Track and Field. And I would play with my dad, and every evening after work he would come home and we would just start running through each game, and we would see how far we could get on Mario Brothers. Then we'd go over to Duck Hunt, shoot some ducks. The dog would laugh at us. Then we'd play some Track and Field and see who could run the fastest or beat the running pad the fastest. And that's where it all began.
All right. Well, so you said you're 38. What do you say to people who tell you you're too old to be?
Well, I would say it depends on the game, because I would agree with them when it comes to some games. When it comes to games that I either just don't get, or I don't, I'm like an old man when it comes to games like Apex or first-person shooters. I just didn't grow up playing those games, and those games didn't ever really click with me. Like, even looking back at when GoldenEye came out on N64, I would play for fun with friends, but I never got to the point where I got my kicks out of being like the best guy in the room, or being able to throw out the mines and break the game or cheat the system, screen cheat and all that stuff. I just would play for fun. It's all about the joy of the game. There's the challenge involved, but against people, I never was a really big fan of being competitive. So in that respect, I am like an old man. I'm just not interested. I'm like, whatever. I don't feel like playing it and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, for people that would say I'm too old to game, I'd say, well, sorry you feel that way, but I disagree. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, well, that's your opinion, a cow's opinion. It's moo. And so that's probably what I'd say. Thank you for your moo opinion. Yeah.
Well, you touched on one of these earlier, but what would you say your top 5 games are of all time, or even just right now?
All right. The top 5 games. I would have to say that it's probably definitely a right now list, because I just have so many games in my top 5. Like I actually have tried to keep like a top 10 list, and even then I look at it and I have like honorable mentions, and so there's like 15 games in my top 10.
Right.
And so, but I would say right now, if you said, Lucas, you have to pick 5 games. I'm not going to put them in any order, but I would definitely mention God of War for its incredible story and just everything about it, the mythology and the gameplay. And then besides God of War, I would say Dead Cells. I wouldn't have said Dead Cells a year ago, obviously, because I hadn't played it, but I think I first played it in November. And even then, probably the end of last year, I wouldn't have said it was my favorite game, but now it's definitely top 5 for me. I would have to say then, it's so hard to do. So here's the thing that I run into is that some people, when they give a top 5, they like to go just based purely on the game, but I like to go based off of like the experience I had or what it means to me.
Yeah.
So when I say a top 5 game, it's a game that's like special. And so I have to definitely say, and this one's a hard one to do, is the Walking Dead Telltale series.
There you go.
I think season 1 is my favorite, but man, the final season is so heart-wrenchingly good.
Yeah, don't spoil that for me. I haven't played it yet.
No.
So.
I won't dare spoil it.
Okay.
I just all I would say is that it just bookends the game. Like it bookends the series from the first one, season 1, to the fourth, or I guess it's the fourth one, right? The final season's the fourth one. It makes all of it worth it all. If you're like so about season 2 or season 3, don't worry about it. Just get to season 4, and like season 1 and season 4 are just perfect beginnings and ends to the series. And so I have to put Walking Dead in there as like top 5 of all time. And then I would have to say Uncharted 4. I think the Uncharted series for me got me back into PlayStation. Like I got into the PlayStation 1 and then I fell kind of off the horse, the Sony pony. I fell off of that with PlayStation 2. But then when I came to Brazil to be a missionary, I met some guys that I would hang out with that had PlayStation 3. And I was like, man, I've hardly ever played a PlayStation 3. What is this Uncharted game? And one evening we played through like half of the story. And I was like, oh man, I got to get me a PlayStation. And so the Uncharted series has always been special to me for that reason, because it got me into PlayStation. And it pretty much led me to the point where I am now, where that's pretty much the only thing I play. I do have a Wii, and I do have like the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo Classic, which I still love and play those with my kids. I play them by myself, but for the most part, I'm all about the PlayStation ecosystem games and all that jazz. So Uncharted 4, definitely in the top 5. And then the final one, I'm going to have to just say, I've got to say Spider-Man. He's one of my favorite superheroes, so I have to put that up there as a top 5 because of the story, because of the feeling that you get swinging around the city. It's like you are Spider-Man, and I love his joking and yet his very compassionate, kind-hearted, serious side. That is just such a well done game, and not only getting to play that game and enjoying that story, but like my son picking up a controller and saying, "Dad, can I explore the city with you?" Like he's 7 now. He didn't say it like that, but it was pretty much, "Dad, can I play?" And then he could just pick it up and he just started going through the city, and that became like a ritual while I was playing the game. Is at some point, either at the end or at the beginning of my playtime, he would just run through the city, and I'd just watch him and say, "Hey, grab that backpack over there." That's such a special game. And I know my top 5, I think we gave our top 5 games of all time like a month ago on the Good Morning Guys, and I'm pretty sure I didn't have that top 5 at that point, but it's just something, it's just fluid sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there's just, after all these years, there are so many good games to play. But that's probably the top 5 I'm going to give on this show, at least.
Fair enough. What would you say is the most underrated game you've ever played?
Oof. Underrated game. Underrated game. Oh man, that's a hard one. Man, I am totally blanking on underrated games, or just in games in general. I mean, shoot, I almost feel like I have to look at a a list of games I've played to see what to even stir my mind on an underrated game. I mean, cause like for me, one difficulty I have is, you know, and I think a lot of us have. There's so many games, I can't always play them all. I think hardly anyone can play them all.
Yeah.
But in the process of not being able to play them all, you kind of have to have parameters to guide you on what you're going to play. And so sometimes it's the economical side where I'm like, well, this is on sale, so I'm going to play this. Other times it's based on, like, sometimes I'll just say, okay, this game needs to have a, like, I don't cut it off, but if a game is like in the 60s on Metacritic or something, I'm not going to like jump right into it. It's going to have to be something that either has a history with me or other people that I trust have told me it's a really good game. And so it's really hard to think of an underrated game because a lot of the times I'm playing, you know, higher rated games. And I won't say that they're all good, the games I play, but I will say, you know what, I'm going to say that in my circle of friends and the people that I talk with and hang out with and talk video games with, I would say Shovel Knight is an underrated game for people that are more of, have modern taste, and they're like, oh, that looks like a little retro, not a baby game, but like it just doesn't, they kind of let the 8-bit aesthetic like stop them from really getting into it and not realizing that it actually has a deep story to it. It's multi-layered, and it is such a rich in content kind of video game. I don't know if have you played Shovel Knight at all?
No.
Any expansion packs?
It's been one of those on my list of maybe someday I'll play it, but probably not.
Oh man.
And it's I mean,
so
like,
here,
it looks great. Don't get me wrong, like it legitimately looks great. It's just more been, okay, I have these other games. What am I more interested in playing right now? And, you know, typically when I go for 2D games, most often I go for Metroidvanias. And so Shovel Knight is just kind of low priority.
Yeah, I understand. But I will say that that is a game that that also is on my top 5. Even though I already mentioned my top 5, that game is also my top 5. It's not just because of the game itself. It's 8-bit visuals. It's incredible story. It's got incredible stories. There's like 4 different not main characters, but there's 4 different campaigns, like 4 different stories you can play through, and they all are like interrelated and at different times. And man, it's such a good game. I really would recommend that you carve out some time to try out Shovel Knight, because it is like I don't know how much of like classic Nintendo you played maybe later on if you went back. I mean, you have a Switch, so maybe you've played some classic Nintendo games, but it pays so much homage to the classic games like Zelda and Metroid and trying to think of the other ones. That there's so many classic Nintendo games that it plays homage to, that it just takes all the aspects of those and just makes it into a beautiful symphony of shovels and knights, and showed it, you know, just great gameplay and stuff. So yeah, I would recommend it. But that's a very underrated game for people that don't get the visual appeal of it, or think it's just a simple side scroller. So
all right, well that works as an answer for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So on the flip side, what would you say is your favorite game or game series?
My favorite game series. I would have to say it's, to look at it broadly, I would say my favorite series, I don't know if this is too broad, but it's the Telltale game series. They're the games that I've most platinumed, whether it's Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands, Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the decisions and the stories behind a lot of those Telltale games. And so I would say overall, to me, it's the greatest mix of like playing a video game and watching a TV show. And I also, being a platinum trophy hunter with PlayStation games, I do appreciate the pretty straightforward platinums I can get by playing through a game and then getting that ding at the end.
Yeah.
To show that I've completed everything. But I would say of all the different series or game styles or genres or whatever, this is the Telltale games. And if I had to be more specific, I would say the Walking Dead series. It sometimes is a little graphic for my tastes, and maybe the language gets a little more heated than I prefer. But at the same time, the tough decisions you make, the people dynamics and things that you go through in that game is really, really incredible, and it really just takes you in and really gets you enthralled in the story. So I would say it's that. As a runner-up, I would probably say the Uncharted series, just because it's like Indiana Jones mixed with a little more, I guess, youthful flair.
Yeah.
And just a great adventure with great set pieces and action and humor and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Uncharted 4 is pretty much a perfect ending for the whole series.
Oh, man. So good. So good.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, what is a game or a game series that was completely off your radar but you ended up loving?
Boy, you're asking the tough ones. I should have done more homework. Well, I'm going to have to, again, consult my list of games to think about something that snuck up on me that I wasn't expecting. You know, I would say actually, in talking about Dead Cells earlier and how much I've gotten invested and enthralled in that game, I would say in general the types of game that the type of game that has really like snuck up on me over the years is roguelike games. I don't know that I've played, I guess, roguelike and Metroidvania style games. Like I never grew up playing. I didn't play Metroid. I didn't play Super Metroid, Castlevania games. I dabbled in those games, and so I didn't grow up playing a lot of those. I always enjoyed side scrollers, but I just in general liked. I was pretty eclectic. I mean, I still am pretty eclectic outside of like Battle Royale. I like in sports. I like pretty much all genres of games and types of games. But the roguelike and Metroidvania, I'm going to lump them together. I know they're different, but I never would have imagined, 5 years ago or a few years ago that any kind of roguelike or Metroidvania would be like an automatic, would automatically grab me. Whether it's, like a Dead Cells games or Rogue Legacy. I don't know if you've played that.
No.
That's probably one of the toughest platinum trophies I've ever gotten, and it took like 70 hours and lots of dying and lots of frustration. But just something about the side-scrolling Metroidvania roguelike games, just like it just scratches this itch that I just keep wanting to go back to. Another game that I love, the humor. The play style is Guacamelee. And I think you've mentioned to me that you have played this game. So
yeah, several
I know
times.
that at least. Yeah, and I love Guacamelee and just the fighting and the moves and the humor. Like I said, my wife is she's Hispanic, and she grew up for a part of her. Actually, I think for her whole high school career, she grew up in Mexico, and she actually watched me play the game a few times, and she was laughing at some of the jokes and how like accurate they were, and then also how accurate they were in terms of like how Americans see Mexico, and just I studied Spanish in college and high school, and then now I'm semi-fluent in Portuguese, and so even a lot of the language style jokes and different things that they talk about in the game is just really funny. And but that game is just so good, and it's just the roguelike Metroidvania style games where it just, I don't know, I just can't resist, and I just love every one of them. I do plan on going back and playing Metroid, Super Metroid. I actually started Castlevania Symphony of the Night a month or two ago, but then I got neck deep in Dead Cells, and I haven't gone back yet, but I do plan on going back and playing it. It's been pretty good. So I would say that's the style of game or the game series. And again, that might be going too broad. I went pretty broad with the underrated, or with the my favorite series.
Well, no,
So,
I mean, I think that fits,
yeah.
pretty much with off your radar, because you said it was something that you weren't really interested in before, and then you got
Right.
into, and now you're addicted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's good. I would say though, if you're gonna do Metroid, start with Super Metroid, because
Oh yeah.
it's easily the best of the games. I mean,
Is it?
it's not a perfect game. It's definitely got some design flaws. At least in terms of some of the platforming compared with some of the later ones, but as an overall package, it's extremely good. And like, I got into Metroid really late. My first one was Super Metroid, and that was '08, I believe, is when I finally played that. And after
Okay.
that, I couldn't get enough of them, and was playing them back to back. So
Yeah.
it's definitely
Nice.
a good one to start with.
Yeah, I definitely will. I have like I said, the Nintendo and Super Nintendo classics, and I do have plans to eventually play and beat every one of the games on both of those little mini systems. So
Well, good luck with that.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Well,
You got what?
all I can
like
say
Ghouls
is
and Ghosts
thank
on there
God
or
for.
something, right?
Oh, I beat that one.
Oh, okay.
But I will say the secret is called save scumming.
That's
I
true.
am not above. I am not above those kind of practices, and so I want to experience the games. I don't need to say that I like purely beat it because I'm the man. It was just like save scum away, and that's the only way I could beat Ghouls and Goblins. It was ridiculous. That is a hard game.
Okay, so getting back to questions here. When
Yes,
when
sir.
you aren't
Sorry.
no, this is all on track, so no problem at all.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good.
When you aren't recording the podcast or gaming for that matter, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
I mean, you've kind of touched on this, but why don't you get more specific into it?
Yeah, so I am a pastor and a missionary in Brazil. I did pastor in the U.S. for a while in West Virginia and Ohio. I'm originally from West Virginia, and probably from 16 years old, I think, I knew I wanted to be a pastor and a missionary. I felt a call. I felt a desire from God to do that, and so I've been living that dream for the past 8 years now, since 2012, living in Brazil. Learning Portuguese, and pretty much my job as a missionary and pastor is to just develop relationships with God, with people. I preach in English, preach in Portuguese. I coordinate mission trips. Really, my whole goal, and kind of like I touched on with Good Morning Guys, is to just create a bridge, create more connections, whether it's between God and people, myself and people. Because I feel like and of course this plays into a game that I've not yet played that I definitely plan on playing is Death Stranding. That's all about making connections, from what I've heard, anyways. And that's pretty much what I'm all about as a missionary and pastor. And of course that can, when it comes to ministry, it can get kind of, I don't know, like in terms of like salaries and what you do for a living, it's what I do is very relational and just very much like, sending a message to someone and talking to them, praying with them, and whether that's in Portuguese or English, whether that's with people around me here in the city I live in, Sao Paulo, or if that's in people in the U.S. That's what I do for a living. I don't have a 9 to 5. It can, I could have nothing really going on during the day and then get really busy at night. But that's what I do for a living.
All right. So, starting to venture towards the direction of the other half of this series here is the dad part, but let's get first into marriage. How long have you been married?
I have been married, I think in May it's going to be 15 years.
Okay.
I think the math checks out. May 2005, so 15 years.
What day in May?
May 7th.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because I got married in May as well, so I was.
Oh yeah? What's your date?
16th.
All right, nice.
Which this year would be episode 400, though who knows what's going to happen with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a bummer.
We'll definitely be praying towards the direction of Corona Chan disappearing a little bit so that episode 400 can still happen, among many other things. People can get back to work and
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
important
definitely.
things, more important things than episode 400. But yeah.
Yep.
How long have you been a dad?
I have been a dad since 2010. So for 10 years, going, I think in 4 days, it's going to be 10 years that I've been a dad.
Wow. And how's your experience been as a dad?
Oh, it's been some of the best and the worst of times.
Right.
It's like every part of the spectrum, but overall, it's been the greatest blessing and fulfillment of just my calling as a pastor. Like I talked about having a calling as a pastor and missionary. Like my greatest ministry now in life is raising my children with my wife and teaching them about God, loving them, showing them how to love others. So that's pretty much what it's been all about the past 10 years. But it's not been easy, that's for sure.
Right. What's the most surprising thing you've learned in parenting?
The most surprising thing is that when it comes to the outcome of who your child is going to be, it is 100% nurture and 100% nature. You have people, I remember the argument of, is it nature or nurture back in when I was learning science and biology and all that stuff. And people say, oh, it's more this, more that. I mean, as a parent, I've observed and realized that it is 100% both. It is both nurture and nature, 100% of each. There's no arguing that in any form or way. It's crazy, and that's really surprised me because my kids will sometimes do and say things that I know I have not done it as an adult, that they do exactly the way I did it as a child, or they say it exactly the way I said it as a child. And then there's other things where our kids will, when they're interacting with each other, they'll interact because my wife and I have an older daughter who's going to be 10 soon and a son who's 7. And the way they interact with each other sometimes is based on how we interact with them. So like my daughter will try to be the mommy, and sometimes my son will try to be the daddy. And then sometimes they'll interact with each other based on the way that my wife and I interact with each other. And how we, argue or we just have discussions or try to make important decisions and that kind of stuff. So it is just 100% of both nature and nurture. And so that's been one of the many surprises, things that I've realized as a dad.
That's a really good way of putting it. I've never thought of it in those terms specifically, but I like that. I'd say it's 100% accurate. And I haven't been a dad nearly as long as you have, but even so, it's just, that's very accurate. Nature and nurture, 100% of both. I like it.
Yeah, it really is.
What is something you wish you had realized sooner in parenting?
Ooh. Something I would have realized sooner. I wish I would have realized sooner that whether you like it or not, your default is always going to be your default as a dad, or at least in my experience and what I've observed in others, your default as a dad is always going to be your dad. So even if I observed as a kid, and I remember observing this as a kid, my dad was, I wouldn't say he was a workaholic in the sense that he slept, ate, and breathed work, and when he was home, he was always thinking about work. But he was a workaholic in the sense that he owned his own business. He spent way more time working than he did at home, and then everything that kind of went around that, being tired and not really having a good relationship with him because the time was so limited. I observed things like that, and I learned from it. And I was like, I'm not going to be that kind of dad. I'm going to be involved in my kids' lives. I'm not going to just talk to them when they need to be punished, or I need to, teach them, discipline them, that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk to them in good times and the bad. And so I learned, somewhat in the mistakes my dad make, that every dad makes mistakes. And so I'd try to apply those to my life so I wouldn't repeat them. And yet at the same time, my mannerisms, my attitude, the things that make me angry or kind of set me off as a dad and just want me to say, go to your room. Like your default, like my default when I'm not paying attention or I don't have my A game is to be and say and do the things that my dad did. Cause that's what I observed and that's what I learned. And I wish I would have understood that sooner so that I could prepare myself, so that I could kind of set up ways to combat that in a way so that I wouldn't. I mean, in some ways it's good because, like, for example, my dad loves to joke around a lot. And sometimes he jokes around too much, and I'm exactly the same way. Like, I joke with my kids, sometimes to the point where they're crying with frustration, and I'm still making jokes. And that can be good and bad. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah. But I think just understanding that, having that self-awareness that my default is always going to be how I was raised, is how I'm going to raise my kids. And just in understanding that more now, it's helped me become more self-aware and to kind of stop myself when I kind of go down those paths that aren't me or aren't productive. That is just, I'm doing it because I observed it and I'm repeating the cycle. I want to break the cycle. And so realizing that now 10 years down the road has been helpful, but I wish I would have kind of realized it a little sooner.
Well, with the fact that you are married with 2 kids and you have the missionary work, how do you find time to game?
So like I mentioned earlier, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It depends. I will say that in the past year, I've been working from home more. And so it's been a lot easier to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to carve out an hour here and just, relax. For me, gaming is my main way of like decompressing. Of course, I go to God in prayer and I have a devotional time. I try to do it every morning, but the practice I've had since being in Brazil for the past 6-7 years is, for the most part, I start every day with God and games. I just get up early in the morning and I have some devotional time, and then after that I play some games. And those are the 2 ways that I kind of relax / decompress / connect with just kind of prepare myself mentally for the day. And so that's pretty much how it's been. As a dad, as a missionary, as pastor, life is unpredictable. If you need something to decompress or to just kind of relax, you've got to plan it. It's not going to happen naturally unless you're a night owl and you can just stay up all night when people are asleep. But I can't do that. I'm a wreck the next day. So that's pretty much been the main way, is kind of just planning my fun is been my secret to keeping up with gaming amidst being a dad and stuff.
What? So, I mean, apart from saying planning it out, do you have any other tips that you'd give people who are kind of struggling to find the time to game?
I think, I guess I'm trying to think of another way to kind of combat maybe a lack of time or having issues with. I mean, sometimes you just have to realize and be upfront with, maybe this is just a season of life when I can't make it a priority. I mean, there have been definitely months where my gaming was, little to none. And there's been months where it's probably been a little too much. So there are always seasons of life. I would say to have patience, maybe. As a dad, I think one way, at least with having kids now that are 10 and 7 years old, involve your family as much as possible. I know that, like with God of War and, Call of Duty and games that many of us like to play, especially dads and guys and stuff, those aren't games that I'm going to play with my kids. So I kind of have to take a different route and, find games that either are easy or are childish or are at least something that they can enjoy watching, or maybe they can't play it with me, but they enjoy watching me play. And Kingdom Hearts has been a game that the kids and I have gotten into. I hit the struggle bus at the last section of the game. I still intend to go back to it, but it's been like 2 months, and my kids are like, "Dad, we going to finish Kingdom Hearts?" I'm like, "Eventually, kids, we're going to do it." But I would say involve your family as much as possible. My wife loves Angry Birds, and so one Christmas I bought Angry Birds on PS3, and so it's been our practice for the past 4 years, I think, to, every week just play a few levels. She loves to get the 3 stars and get all the Easter eggs and the secret missions and levels and all that jazz. And so, involve your family as much as possible. Find a style of game, or, we love to play Jackbox games, or Knowledge is Power, like trivia games. You just gotta try different things. So, yeah, you're not always going to get that personal time, but even if you can play games with your family, I think that's still fun and can bring joy to your life.
All right. So you have both a boy and a girl, and
Yep.
how would you compare raising the two?
Oh man. Let's see. So something funny about, I'm gonna to talk about my kids and raising a boy versus raising a girl. You also have to go back to also look at the parents. Like of course there's the general, like, girls, like unicorns and princesses, and boys like guns and soldiers and war and fighting and that kind of stuff. And sometimes that can be true, but I actually have a boy that, while he's very much like, let's fight dad and let's, roughhouse, he's also like very sensitive. And I know he gets that from me. Like, he will cry for no reason whatsoever, or you'll just say something with a different intonation, or I don't know. He's very sensitive. And then my daughter, on the other hand, she is not. She is a tomboy. She would rather play with the boys, and she does not like pink. She does not like froofy stuff. Like, she is all about a lot of the things that I like. And I know that part of that is because as she was a baby, she did spend more time, a lot of her waking time with me, because of our schedules. For a time, I was off during the day because for some time as a pastor in the U.S., I was also a server waiter at Applebee's and Texas Roadhouse at some restaurants. And so my wife would work during the day, and then I would be with our daughter during the day, and then she would come home. We would tag each other out. My wife would tag me, and I would go to work at night, and so my daughter would sleep most of the night. So I spent most of my daughter's waking hours, and so it shows in our connection we have and our bonding. And then the same with my son. When we first moved to Brazil was when he was born, and my wife didn't work for the first year and a half that we lived in Brazil, and she spent almost 24/7 with my son. And now, in terms of our relationships with them, our kids that have a stronger bond with one parent over the other, just because of the time we spent together, they have more of our characteristics. So my son has more of my wife's characteristics. My daughter has more of my characteristics. And so, of course, the raising a boy and raising a girl comes into play, but a lot of times their relationship with each parent will also affect the way they act and the way they deal with, the way they deal with difficulty or challenges in life, or the way they laugh and their humor. At this point, I've spent a lot more time with my son, and so now both my kids have my kind of humor, much to my wife's chagrin. She does not appreciate the fart jokes and the frat boy type of joking around and sounds and noises. My kids will just be like, one of them will say poop, and then the other one will just start laughing, and all of a sudden they're going on for like 20 minutes. And I know that's my influence. I try to be responsible, and I try to teach them, but it just comes out sometimes. And so, but in terms of raising boys and girls, you just, at the early parts of it, they're just babies, and you don't really have to pay attention. But at some point, you have to really, pray and really just ask God for wisdom, especially if your relationship's not that strong, in our case, I had a stronger relationship with my daughter, and my wife had a stronger relationship with my son, and we really had to be like, well, at some point, my son's going to go through, or both of them are going to go through puberty, and they need to have a strong relationship with their, the parent that's of the same gender. So you really have to just be patient and understand that while they're individuals and they're going to have certain characteristics based on their gender, for the most part, a lot of it's going to come down to their relationship with their parents. And the stronger relationship they have, the more likely they are to repeat and mimic that parent's attitudes and words and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that answers the question very straightforward, but that's kind of the ideas that kind of pop in my head in terms of raising a boy and a girl.
No, that's actually great. That actually kind of lends into my next question, which was, with having both, what advice would you give to newer parents? Especially just in how to parent the girls versus parenting boys. And like, to give you an example, I have 3 kids. I have 2 sons. One is 4, one is 2, and then a daughter who's 14 months old. And so, like, I haven't experienced the majority of what you've experienced because my kids are much younger, especially with my daughter.
Yeah. I would say, in terms of, like, if you're just starting out, try to ride the line between, I don't think either extreme, and this is my personal opinion, obviously, it goes without saying, I guess, I don't need to say it, but I find that your best route in terms of parenting is to try to find the balance between encouraging them to be the girls and boys that God made them to be, but at the same time let them choose. Like, for example, my son, between my son and my daughter, my son is the most organized of the two. And growing up, he loved to play restaurant or host, or like he would set the table and he would play tea time, and my daughter was just like, she just wanted to watch TV, or she wanted to draw and be an artist. And not that either of those things are specific to boys and girls, but at the same time, you think of like playing house or tea time, you think, like, traditionally speaking, that should be the girl that does it. And we just went with it. And I recognized very quickly that, sure, he's playing tea time and I don't know that he necessarily like played with dolls, but I was immediately understanding that this kid is organized and he likes to be organized, and that's an expression of his personality. And so a lot of times, whether they play with trucks or whether they play with unicorns, it's not as important as understanding like why they're playing with it. Like why is and in doing that reveals their personality that's developing. And so my son gains a lot of comfort, and he shines the most when he can organize something, or you give him a job like, can you organize this, or even like telling him to clean his room. He loves it. And then my daughter, on the other hand, if you tell her to clean her room, she's like, I don't want to. And of course, she's getting close to being a teenager, so of course she's going to have a bad attitude.
Yeah.
But you have to think, okay, she needs a carrot on the end of the stick. Her reward is not the room being organized. Her reward is, and so when you do that, you're going to get a treat, or you're going to get to, have 30 minutes to play on your phone or whatever. You have to understand that there are differences and the things that maybe are specific to a gender, or that some people, buy into and some people don't. All of that is not as important as understanding that what they do as a man, as a woman, as a girl, as a boy, is an expression of their personality, and it's for you to get to know them and to kind of look at the bigger picture. Don't get lost in the, well, boys do this and girls do that, and don't get lost in the, they can do whatever they want, because they can't. Some kids can't organize. Some kids can't play by themselves. You just have to pay attention and get to know them through the things that they do, and not just think of it as a boy activity or a girl activity. So I guess that's some of the thoughts I have about that.
Well, I mean, it really just goes along with the proverb, where the most direct translation of the proverb, which is raise up a child according to his bend, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Yeah.
And, go according to what the kid is like, and, you work with who they are and what kind of person they are, and go from there. So.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so I have just one more question here.
Okay.
And this is the most important question of all.
Oh, man, no pressure.
Do you tell dad jokes, and what is your best one?
Oh, man. Do I tell dad jokes? So, I think it was last year. It's been a year and a half since we moved to Sao Paulo, and one of the things that I started doing that I had done in the past, my wife's a teacher, and she's been a teacher since we graduated from college. She's been a teacher. She's had stints where she's done other stuff like office assistant or administrative assistant, whatever. But in a lot of those schools, while I may not have been a teacher with her, I always volunteered to substitute teach. And so that was no different in coming to Sao Paulo, in the new city we live in, the school that my kids go to and my wife teaches at. I volunteered. I can't say volunteer because they pay me to do it. But I kind of opened up my schedule to occasionally do substitute teaching. And one of the traditions I started with the students at their school is that every day I start with a dad joke. Like every class I start with a dad joke. And so I've done enough classes with them that they've come to expect it. And even some parents, they will tell me that their kids either tell them the dad joke or they'll tell me, those parents will tell me a dad joke because they know I appreciate it. So I love a good dad joke. And I will say that came also from my father. And even growing up, I did not appreciate the dad jokes as a kid. But now as a dad myself, I totally appreciate it. I totally own it and just go with it. And you asked for a dad joke, is that correct?
Yes, give me your best one.
Oof.
Or your worst one, depending on how you look at it.
You know what? I'm gonna give you one that caught me off guard and that really made me laugh. Not just because of the joke itself, but the meme picture that went with it. And I don't know if you've seen this one, but we're just gonna pretend like you haven't. So picture this: it's a scene from Point Break. I don't know if you've seen that with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. It's kind of older.
I know what it is, but I probably seen the meme to some degree or another.
Yeah. So in the meme, this is the only time I've seen the meme, but in the meme they're looking out on the ocean, and Patrick Swayze's character is talking to Keanu Reeves, and he's like, he says, "Do you think the ocean's salty because the beach never waves back?" And it's just this. It just totally caught me off guard with the use of salty, and when you're salty with someone, and then that the ocean waves, but the beach never waves back. It just hit me, and it just got me giggling. And I was like, man, that is a good one.
That's great.
So yeah, that's the most recent one. I'm gonna give you another one that I like just because of where I live. But how many South Americans does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
A Brazilian. My Brazilian friends very, very much appreciate that dad joke. So
no, that's a good one. That's a very good one.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, but yeah, they're a dime a dozen in a good way. I love dad jokes, and I'm subscribed to all. I follow all the Instagram, not all of them, but there's a couple good Instagram dad joke ones. You can just type in dad joke and just follow like 2 or 3, and that's probably plenty. But yeah, I follow and even in our Discord for Married to the Games, and I think Married to the Game has the We Got Jokes channel, and then in Good Morning Guys we have just flat out dad joke channel. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. And yeah, people are constantly posting dad jokes, and it just always gives us a good laugh. So yeah, love them dad jokes.
All right. Well, that's all I have for questions. So do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. How old did you say your kids are again?
4, 2, and 14 months.
Man, you are a brave soul. I mean, you have Irish twins, right? The two youngest being 2 years old and 14 months. They're only
the first two are 20 months
apart?
20 months apart, and then the second and third are 18 months apart.
Okay. I think the question I'd have for you is because I'm never, well, as God is my witness, I pray I never can give a personal answer to this question. But what are your feelings on going from 2 kids to 3 kids?
Honestly, it wasn't that dramatically different. I think the biggest thing was really just getting used to having a girl, just because, my first two were boys, true. And so it's just the difference from that standpoint. Otherwise, I mean, it really wasn't as big of a change as it was going from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Or even more so going from 0 to 1, because that's the biggest right. change of all. But
that is definitely the biggest change.
Yeah,
and that's something that I could never. I've heard parents say this, that after you have 2, there's very little difference. I'm like, I don't believe you, because when we went from 1 to 2, it was like I wanted to have 3. I even had considered having 4 at one point, in like terms of like family planning and all that stuff. But after we had after we had my son, I was like, we are done, finished. Now it does help that our kids cover, like, at least like in terms of their physical characteristics and attributes, they cover all the bases. Like my daughter looks just like my wife. My son looks just like me. They have so much of both of our personalities. I'm like, the third kid would be so ugly and have no personality whatsoever that I just wouldn't want to do that to the world or him or her. So we closed the factory some years ago. So I'm never going to have, again, you can't never say never. I learned that from American Tale, from a little animated pigeon, but never say never. But we've pretty much kind of set up the path of never having a third or fourth or fifth or child. So I'm always curious to know with those that have 3. I applaud you for having 3 kids. Do you guys plan on having more than 3?
We really don't know. If we do, we're gonna try to wait a while.
Yeah.
I would
don't
say
blame you there.
One thing for sure is that if we do decide to have any more, it wouldn't be until we actually have a house, because we live in a 3-bedroom apartment, and I mean, it works, but it's it gets kind of cramped with 3 young kids and a dog and a cat and 2 parents, and it's just it'll be easier if we have more space, but even then, it's just kind of, we're not really sure. We like having 3. It's nice having 2 boys and a girl, and just, I don't know. But I mean, it's true. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we'll see what God has in mind, because we didn't think we would be having number 2 or number 3 as soon as we did, so it worked out. But now it's like, I can't imagine not having all 3 of them.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I bet. And you know what? You mentioned having the 2 boys and then the girl. I think if I would have had, if our second would have been a girl, and we would have ended up with 2 girls, I might have been more. I would have been more tempted to, not tempted, but I would have felt more of an inclination to try maybe one more time to see if we could have a boy. Because originally that's like, when we found out we were pregnant, I was like, I want it to be please be a boy, please be a boy. I don't know what it was. I just wanted a boy so badly. And then when I found out it was going to be a girl, I was both like not surprised and a little disappointed, just because I don't know what it was. But once Natasha, our daughter, once she came into this world, I was just like, that's it. I'm so glad it happened the way it did. It was just perfect. And then when my son came, we didn't have the greatest start, and just in a matter of life. And I don't think he had colic, but he had a chip on his shoulder from the beginning, and he was just so different from my daughter. And you've experienced this probably, having now 2 boys and then a girl. Like, man, it's amazing how different kids can be using the same 2 people's genes. our genetic makeup, we're still contributing pretty much the same thing every time, and yet they come out so differently.
Really,
The personalities are crazy different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if I would have had 2 girls, probably I would have been like, can we try to have one more, maybe have a boy? But then I don't want to end up like my best friend in West Virginia who has 4 girls. He had a girl at the beginning, and then he had triplets.
Oh, my goodness.
And now it's just him and then a bunch of girls. His wife is 4 girls. I'm pretty sure they have a cat or 2 that's female as well. Like, he's surrounded.
Yeah.
He is outnumbered, and I would not want to be in that situation. That's way too much estrogen under one roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have any other thoughts?
I can't say any that come to mind. I do want to say it's just been a privilege to be on your podcast, on your YouTube show deal, on the Frozen Gamer interview series. And it's nice to really talk to you in person. We've chatted in kind of off and on through the Married to the Games community, and it's cool to finally talk to you. I can't say meet you in person because we haven't done that yet, but
Yeah.
it's cool to just chat with you and finally put a voice with the name. That's always a cool thing to do, and so it's a privilege and a pleasure to be a part of your show.
Well, it's been great having you on. I was looking for different guys to do this series, and then when Mark Boucher mentioned that you were, mentioned you and Patrick about,
Yep.
it's like, oh, I don't know why I didn't think of you guys, especially since I, have never really had an opportunity to talk to you outside of the Discord, and
Right,
so it's
it's
just
true.
it's been really nice being able to talk to you, and I feel like you've also given some good things that I haven't heard yet from other dads.
Yeah, good.
Some good ways of putting things and some pieces of advice that are practical and I think really will help me too. So I appreciate
Great.
that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. That's awesome, and I definitely am gonna. I'll be honest that I hadn't had the chance to listen to your past episodes, but I'm definitely gonna be checking it out and listening in to see, to get more feedback as well, because I appreciate what you're doing in terms of getting dads and gamers together, because there's no need to go at it alone. And even though we're not the most common type of gamer, it's cool to kind of get different perspectives, like you alluded to, just to hear a different perspective and different practical ways that we can improve as dads. Because that's the goal, right? Our goal is not to play video games all the time, and it's a hobby, it's a thing we do, but the main thing we're doing is being husbands, husbands and dads, and raising up the next generation. So it's definitely a thing that I'm gonna definitely keep checking out. What who you interview and the kind of things they share. So it's exciting.
Very much so. So before we head out, can you let people know where to find you?
Yeah, so I think the most common place you can find me, that where I'm gonna talk about the very things we've been talking about: video games, dad life, husband life, missionary life, is on Twitter at MTTG Brazil Team. Even though I'm a part, I co-host another podcast, I still am a lifetime member of the Married to the Games community, so that's my handle. You can also find our podcast at the GMG Podcast, the Good Morning Guys Podcast. And probably Twitter's the best way to kind of connect with us. From there, you can get connected to, like our Discord and that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much the main place where I hang and connect with other gamers and dads and that kind of stuff. So, yep.
And where can people find your podcast?
Oh, right. Apple Music, Spotify, Podbean, SoundCloud. I think most of the major ones are covered. You just type in The Good Morning Guys and we should pop up. And like I said, we have about 80 episodes under our belt, 81 I think this week. And we really talk about everything from bathroom etiquette to death to best video games, movies, spoiler casts, all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty varied, and the titles of each show is like a Good Morning 4 and then whatever. So whatever tickles your fancy, you'll probably find something that you'll be interested in listening to, talking with us about. It's definitely something that we hope encourages conversation, and we'd love to have you be a part of that conversation and connect with us.
All right, sounds great. Well, until next time, this has been the Frozen Gamer, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.